This is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you to someone is not a violation of the law.
Welcome to the broadcast, everyone. We put together a very special documentary, a portion of which you're going to see on this television broadcast. In fact, the entire documentary, called Tax Invasion, is available as a free digital download. You can watch it for free online at irsmovie.com. Now, what you're going to see in the next few moments are interviews with key leaders in Washington, D.C., talking about why it is that the IRS made the determination to target Christian and conservative organizations. Now let's take a look at the movie, Tax Invasion. When it comes to fighting for conservative values, Senator Ted Cruz has made an impressive name for himself in a short time. He's someone who I've known for quite a while, first while he was a Solicitor General, and now as a senator representing Texas. He's a Harvard Law School graduate and has a gift of breaking down the barriers between Washington and mainstream America. Senator, let's focus. I'd like to focus on this IRS matter because it's something you've been very outspoken about, and it's something that I'm litigating, so we're in the middle of this. First of all, your reaction when you first got word. The president said he was outraged. Of course, now he's calling it a phony scandal. But what was your reaction when you first heard about the IRS targeting, which they acknowledged?
It is a gross abuse of power. When Richard Nixon tried to use the IRS to target his political enemies, it was wrong, and it was rightfully decried in a bipartisan manner. And when the Obama administration did the same thing, it's every bit as wrong. And at the time, the president loudly went out and denounced it.
Right.
And then a few months go by and he says it's a phony scandal, move on. We need to get to the bottom of these facts. What we know already is deeply troubling, and the administration's efforts to cover them up is even more troubling.
Well, the worst thing I think that we've seen in the last couple of days on this, and I'm litigating the case, I got 41 plaintiffs here, is you have now the FEC sending emails to Lois Lerner responding to these emails, sharing taxpayer information. It's a criminal act. Now, it was the Attorney General of the United States. Eric Holder said, we're going to have an FBI investigation here. This is criminal. You prosecuted a lot of cases. You've done a lot of cases. So the Attorney General says it, and then you've got the White House saying, but this is all a phony scandal, while we've got the FBI investigating the IRS.
You've got two career employees at the IRS who pleaded the Fifth.
Yep.
Pleading the Fifth means if they testify truthfully, they may incriminate themselves for having committed a crime. And President Obama says this is a phony scandal. And the media, as docile lambs, say, well, they pleaded the Fifth. We can't draw any inferences from that.
Right, no conclusions.
Now look, as you know well in law,
right.
It is true in a criminal case that a jury is not allowed to draw an inference from pleading the Fifth. But in a civil case...
My case is a civil case, right?
A judge will instruct the jury, you may draw a negative inference from this witness pleading the Fifth. You may take it as an implication that they got something to hide.
So you've got an IRS tax code. You've got the IRS chief counsel appointed by the president. Jack Lew is told, the Secretary of Treasury is told by the president, you investigate this, you don't leave any stone unturned, you find out who's responsible. Jack Lew's on TV, Chris Wallace, is asked the question by Chris Wallace, have you talked to the IRS chief counsel, what did he know and when did he know it? No, I haven't spoke to him, I'm not going to, that's not my job. Now the president just instructed him.
Right.
And we've got Carter Hall, a 48-year career IRS lawyer, pointing everything to Washington, pointing it right to the chief counsel's office. So what should happen next?
Well, Jay, if you look at Jack Lew's performance when he went on the Sunday shows, it was eerily reminiscent of Ambassador Susan Rice's performance after Benghazi.
Yep.
He was reading White House talking points.
Yep.
And just like Benghazi, we now know those talking points were false.
Yep.
They were knowingly false, and they were edited by the White House, and the White House was caught lying about their editing the talking points. Just so with the IRS, Jack Lew was sent out there to tell a story.
Right,
and when he said there hasn't been evidence of wrongdoing, you got two employees who pleaded the Fifth.
Right.
I mean, it's a flat-out falsehood. And we know, by the way, there were multiple instances of senior political officials who were aware. We know right now that Tea Party applications were sent to the chief counsel's office. A senior political official, which Jack Lew, apparently following the ostrich strategy, plunges his head in the sand and says, I don't know.
Right.
But we also have heard reports that the general counsel of the Treasury, who is a political appointee, was notified of this before the last election.
Correct.
The Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, who was
Right.
another Obama political appointee, knew about it before the last election. Apparently, so did the White House counsel and the White House chief of staff.
Well, Lois Lerner's lawyer is the former law partner of the White House chief counsel. I mean, this is not an accident. And the current chief counsel of the IRS, pro bono, represented Jeremiah Wright, President Obama's pastor.
Well, and the defense of all of this is President Obama didn't know.
Right.
You know,
Plausible deniability. That's
well,
what they're
and
saying.
I want to ask you a question, Jay.
Yep.
You're one of the most experienced, successful, talented lawyers in the country. Let me ask you, if you were defending a company, if I were the CEO of a company, and my company were accused of negligence, of maintaining a negligent plant where someone was injured or even killed,
Right.
and my general counsel and chief operating officer had been notified of our
yes,
negligence,
right.
how effective do you think my defense would be as CEO if I said, I didn't know, they didn't tell me?
Zero. Your culpability is it's apparent authority. You're the president of the company. You're responsible, even if they didn't tell you. The fact that they didn't tell you tells you how incompetent your leadership was.
Well, yeah, and that's of course right. You're on constructive notice.
Right.
Once a senior political official is informed, whether it's the chief counsel of the IRS, the general counsel of the Treasury, the deputy secretary of the Treasury, the White House counsel, or the chief of staff, President Barack Obama is constructively on notice because one of two things happened. Either they told him or they kept him deliberately ignorant because they thought they were somehow protecting him from the scandal. But what we do know is they were notified about it before the last election, and they made the political decision, gosh, we're not going to let anyone know. And it may have just occurred to them that discovering that the IRS was targeting Barack Obama's political opponents before the election might have had some negative electoral consequences.
The Internal Revenue Service scandal is getting worse. Now there are new revelations of the IRS targeting Tea Party and conservative groups, disturbing admissions that the IRS scheme was even more partisan and more coordinated than previously thought. The American Center for Law and Justice represents 41 groups in a federal lawsuit challenging the IRS. We intend to get to the bottom of this unlawful and unconstitutional scheme. An out-of-control IRS that intentionally targeted conservative organizations, violating their First Amendment rights. Stand with the ACLJ now. Sign on to our petition to end IRS abuse. Add your name by calling 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.
It was important for me to not flood this conversation with just politicians. I wanted to bring you someone who is a donor to the ACLJ and to countless other organizations. But he's also a businessman. Joe Gregory has actually taken companies public. He's the founder of King Pharmaceuticals. He's a job creator. He's also partnered with golfer Jack Nicklaus on charitable endeavors. When you first got word of the IRS scandal, what was your reaction?
As an American, I love this country. And so I also like the freedom to support those organizations that defend and advocate for those principles that the country was founded upon and that we enjoy today. That's why I enjoy supporting the American Center for Law and Justice. That's why I enjoy supporting a lot of other nonprofit organizations. And when I heard that the IRS was targeting groups that had their name, a patriot by their name, or Tea Party by their name,
or Liberty even,
or Liberty by their name, I mean, it really upset me to think that this administration and our federal government had an agency that was actually targeting people that they considered under the names of Liberty and Patriot as something that they felt they needed to slow down their process, target them, and act in a manner that I don't believe was very American. I mean, this goes beyond just the normal oversight function of government to really oppressing citizens, and really sounds like a government that's trying to attack who they perceive as their political enemies.
I wanted you to look at this through the lens of a donor, because you are a donor to many organizations, that the IRS was asking about you,
was asking groups like us about our donors and wanting information about our donors. How did that make you feel?
It gave me pause.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm the kind of guy, you know me, Jay, that I've got a backbone, and that's the kind of thing that's going to make me even more determined to support those organizations that I believe in.
Dr. Ben Carson is a recently retired pediatric neurosurgeon from Johns Hopkins Hospital who garnered international attention for being a specialist in separating conjoined twins. His story was made into a film called Gifted Hands, starring Cuba Gooding Jr. Politically, he's described as an independent, but that certainly doesn't mean he keeps his opinions to himself. He recently made waves in the media for a speech at the National Prayer Breakfast with President Obama sitting right beside him.
There is no one who can possibly comply with every jot and tittle of our tax. If I wanted to get you or you, I could get you on a tax issue. That doesn't make any sense. What we need to do is come up with something that's simple. And when I pick up my Bible, you know what I see? I see the fairest individual in the universe, God, and He's given us a system. It's called tithe.
Although retired from an active surgery practice at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Carson has a very busy schedule. However, he told me that he wanted to take a few moments and share his feelings and views with our audience. He joins us via satellite. Let me take you back, though. You know, you're a pediatric neurosurgeon. You're used to tense situations. But how was it giving a speech that wasn't just happy thoughts, so to speak, but a really tough speech, a really good speech, detailed speech, really critiquing the administration when the president's 3 feet away from you? How did that, give us some of the atmospherics on that. How did that go?
Well, you know, first of all, it was interesting in the sense that the last time I did the National Prayer Breakfast, which was in 1997, and Clinton was president, I had an opportunity to talk to him beforehand in the green room. Lots of pleasantries were exchanged. And President Obama didn't bother to come to the green room or to talk to anybody. So I kind of, as I was giving the speech, really didn't look at him, really wasn't thinking about, quite frankly, the fact that he was there. You know, I had prayed a lot about this because I wondered why it was arranged that I was, you know, chosen to do this. I'd given it before. I asked them, has anybody ever done it before? Twice, and they said only one person, and that's Billy Graham. And I certainly don't see myself in that category. And I just said, why is this happening, Lord? What is it that you want me to say? And I really didn't know until the morning of the speech, to be honest with you.
You've got this whole controversy with the IRS brewing, which has been significant with record leaks and targeting of individuals. But you mentioned, and you've talked about this, the IRS is going to be playing a role in our health care under the Obamacare legislation. And that, in my mind, is a very dangerous move.
You know, here we've already demonstrated that there's significant corruption in the IRS, and now you're going to take them and put them over the very largest program in the government. I mean, there's no logic being exercised here whatsoever.
You had this leak of 100,000 basically Social Security numbers, and tax information now has been leaked by the agency, by the IRS itself. They're going to have access to this mega data report for healthcare records, and of course they're going to be doing the enforcement of Obamacare. The IRS is supposed to be hiring 15,000 new agents. Now, you've been practicing medicine for a long time, a world-renowned neurologist, a pediatric surgeon. I mean, your expertise as a pediatric neurosurgeon and the complications of those files and the records that you have to deal with, how do you feel about, as a physician and as a citizen, that information being placed in the hands of the Internal Revenue Service?
What's even more alarming to me is that people aren't as alarmed about this as they need to be. We're talking about the very fundamental freedoms that characterize the creation of our nation. And we're just sort of like sitting there saying, yeah, that's terrible. Okay, what's on TV? You know, we have got to wake up out of this slumber and recognize that the fundamental principles of freedom are being threatened in our society.
What do you do to go about getting those people, the American people, really alert and engaged, awakened on these issues? But how do you do this on a mass scale?
You know, I've been traveling across the country giving lots of talks, you know, 3 or 4 talks a week. The crowds are just enormous. The level of enthusiasm is through the roof. And, you know, I think it's a matter of trying to awaken people, because there are a lot of people who have tuned out, who just feel that the whole thing is so corrupt. you know, some of the saddest communications I've gotten have been from elderly Americans who used to be the most enthusiastic voting bloc, who just say they're waiting to die. You know,
Right.
they just don't feel that there's any hope for our country anymore. And I think the more we talk about it, the more enthusiastic these people become. In some of my talks this week, you know, I've been talking about courage and bravery and talking about, you know, Nathan Hale, Patrick Henry, some of these people, what they were willing to give up, John Hancock, because they believed in what they were fighting for. And, you know, we say that we're the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, you cannot be free if you're not brave. Freedom is not free.
You know, Benjamin Disraeli had this great quote saying, "Nothing's too difficult for the brave," and I think there's a lot of truth to that.
I actually think that the American people are a lot smarter than anybody gives them credit for. It's just that things typically have not been explained very well, or they're explained by politicians who put horrendous spins on things. And then, unfortunately, when you can co-opt the media, then you've really got things going for yourself. You know, and Alinsky said, you know, your opinion that you're trying to thrust on the people may be a minority opinion, but the goal is to make everybody think that it's the majority opinion and that their opinion is the minority opinion. Then it becomes much easier to shut them down.
As you've just heard, we are mounting a huge campaign to stop the abuse of the Internal Revenue Service from engaging in this kind of unconstitutional targeting of Christian and conservative organizations. To that end, we have a petition up to stop the IRS abuse. Over 130,000 signatures already. We're going to present those to members of Congress. That's where you come in. We need your help on this. Join with us. We don't think it's appropriate for the government to be asking people the content of their prayers. If you agree with me, go to ACLJ.org and sign the petition right now, or call us at 1-877-989-2255. That's ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. Again, the IRS not only targeting conservative organizations, but Christian organizations as well, and asking them about the contents of their prayer activity. If you object to that, and I'm sure you do, join with over 130,000 other Americans at ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. Back with more from our movie Tax Invasion in just a moment.
The Internal Revenue Service scandal is getting worse. Now there are new revelations of the IRS targeting Tea Party and conservative groups, disturbing admissions that the IRS scheme was even more partisan and more coordinated than previously thought. The American Center for Law and Justice represents 41 groups in a federal lawsuit challenging the IRS. We intend to get to the bottom of this unlawful and unconstitutional scheme, an out-of-control IRS that intentionally targeted conservative organizations, violating their First Amendment rights. Stand with the ACLJ now. Sign on to our petition to end IRS abuse. Add your name by calling 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.
If you and
Yes.
I were putting the lawsuit on right now, if
Right.
we were trying the IRS in a court of fairness,
Right.
would they pass the test
No.
of being the agency that they're commissioned to be? No, they do not.
Right.
They are guilty.
Right.
Therefore, their punishment needs to be that they need to go away.
Right. It was Eric Holder that said the IRS may have committed criminal acts here. We never said the word criminal. It was Eric Holder. And then the president says these are phony scandals.
If men were angels, there'd be no need of masters.
Right.
And so that's what we know in these bureaucracies. We don't have angels running these
No.
bureaucracies. They need oversight. What you just found out in this motion is there will never be sufficient manpower or resources to effect true justice in oversight. So how will you as an organization ever know that you're getting the justice you deserve, or me as an individual,
Right.
or a member of Congress? People feel far less safe now than they did before.
The way we get through is we stop asking Washington to solve these problems and we start demanding that they solve these problems by creating a massive grassroots initiative around these. This is why I'm a big supporter of the Tea Party, We have some candidates that got to Washington, D.C. in the last election because of support from Tea Party people, grassroots people. So when we develop the national narrative and the people control that narrative, like replace the tax code, energy independence, and restructure Social Security, guess what? It's like creating a parade if you got enough of the people and the voters, the people on Main Street saying, we demand this. The politicians will get out in front of the parade in order to get reelected. Rather than we send them to Washington, D.C., and they forget what they promised us, and they do what they need to do to exchange for political favors while they are there. No, let's create the people's parade demanding these solutions, and politicians will be falling all over each other trying to get out in front of this massive parade.
There is no doubt that this has an effect to inhibit religious liberty, religious freedom. Because first of all, it gives groups like ours pause. We're thinking twice. Okay, now wait a minute, do we really want to get out there and say these things because there could be more payback? It forces you to review your policies and statements in a way we never did before. We felt we were entirely protected under the First Amendment, but this is a free country, and we have the right to say what we want to say, within reason, of course, but I mean, we had always had that freedom. We had always exercised it. Now, we have to have second thoughts about it, and we didn't have them prior to this experience.
I can't even understand my tax return. My tax return is maybe 100 pages long, and I have to assume my accountant's helping me. Right. And then if something's wrong on there, I still signed it. I have to go to jail, even though I can't begin to understand all of the different blanks and all of the whereases and wherefores.
There are more words in the IRS code than there
Right.
are in the Bible.
Right.
The complexity of it. Every year, Americans spend about $500 billion
Trying to comply.
on tax compliance.
Yep.
That's all wasted. That's dead weight loss. That's about the budget of our entire military.
Right.
As we like to say in Texas, that doesn't produce a single truck or tortilla.
Right.
It's just wasted.
Are you worried? You got kids.
I'm worried for their future, yes, but I'm encouraged by organizations like yours and others that have decided that they're just not going to lay down and accept what's going on. And like you, I'm committed to fight. We have no other country to sail to, and this one is dear to me. It's existed through a lot of blood and treasure. A lot of people have sacrificed for our freedoms. And so we need to stand up and defend our freedoms, and I appreciate what the ACLJ is doing in that regard.
Basically, what we're fighting for is the freedom of our nation. Are we going to have a nation that's forever by the people, or a nation that is totally controlled by the government? We get to make that decision. This is a huge part of that decision. If we allow this to go, then we may as well just say, okay, United States and the principles that were involved in its founding, we don't want those anymore. We kind of like, Soviet Union style and Venezuelan style and Cuban style. We're going to go with that.
So now what do? We've laid out the evidence. We've looked at the case. The reality is the IRS can't fix this problem themselves. The very foundation of our country is the idea that American citizens can get together as groups and engage in free speech. We can criticize government. We can disagree with policies. But the IRS most recent documentation shows exactly the opposite, that these organizations were targeted because of their viewpoints. They were told that they were engaged in propaganda. That's the IRS's own language, propaganda. That the arguments they made, whether it was a pro-life position, constitutes emotive speech, too much emotion, not enough fact, at least according to the Internal Revenue Service. So what do we do with the IRS now? How do we handle this? Well, the reality is that our founding documents for this country protects free speech. In fact, the very foundation of our government was the idea that we could criticize the government when we disagree. That's what First Amendment free speech is all about. The Founding Fathers had a very different vision than what the Internal Revenue Service has. The Founding Fathers believed that we have the ability to redress our government for grievances. We can petition the government in that regard. We have the ability to speak out and to engage the culture. And we shouldn't be intimidated by a government agency that really doesn't know what they're doing and is not only applying an unconstitutional test, but an illegal one. So what we need to do is protect our founding fathers' visions of free speech for this country and freedom in the political process. What do we need to do right now? Abolish the IRS. Get rid of it. Start from scratch. The Internal Revenue Code needs to go, and the enforcement agency, the IRS, needs to go with it. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. Could we eliminate the IRS as an enforcement agency?
I think in many ways you could. I think what you could do is you really wouldn't have agents out enforcing things. There'd still be some kind of way to review tax returns, but they would be so simple.
What do you do with the IRS? What do you do with the tax code?
Well, I would abolish it, number one, and I don't think that's overly melodramatic. I really do believe that we need to abolish the tax code, but also abolish the IRS.
If we can enact a fair tax system that's proportional, we don't need the IRS.
The simplest and best solution is to abolish the IRS.
Get rid of it.
To shut it down, to padlock it, and to move to a simple flat tax where every American could fill out his or her taxes on a postcard.
So we're talking about a complete replacement of the tax code, which then leads to the next question, which is a logical one. You know what this is going to be. What do you do with the IRS?
Bye-bye.
That's going to do it for this version or this portion of our movie Tax Invasion. Again, irsmovie.com if you want to see the entire movie, and I encourage you to watch it. It gives you an in-depth look at what the IRS was up to, what the IRS is still doing, and how we're fighting back. The idea, again, that the content of your prayers would be targeted by the IRS seems absurd, but it's actually happening, and it happened in writing from the IRS to our clients. So we're fighting back. Again, the movie's called Tax Invasion. You can watch it for free at irsmovie.com. And if you want to help us end the abuse of what the IRS is engaged in, there's an easy way for you to do it. 130,000 people have already signed on to a petition to stop the IRS abuse. I encourage you to add your name as well. You can do so at ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org, or you can call us at 1-877-989-2255. That's ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. Join with us if you want to stop government interference with prayer.
The Internal Revenue Service scandal is getting worse. Now there are new revelations of the IRS targeting Tea Party and conservative groups, disturbing admissions that the IRS scheme was even more partisan and more coordinated than previously thought. The American Center for Law and Justice represents 41 groups in a federal lawsuit challenging the IRS. We intend to get to the bottom of this unlawful and unconstitutional scheme, an out-of-control IRS that intentionally targeted conservative organizations, violating their First Amendment rights. Stand with the ACLJ now. Sign on to our petition to end IRS abuse. Add your name by calling 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.